Welcome back to lesson 3, where we're going to deep dive into marketing, uh, your sponsorships, all this kind of stuff, your marketing style and your sponsorships and all that kind of stuff. So this last week or the last episode was a bit more nitty gritty RSS feed software, this kind of stuff. This is a bit, I wouldn't say it's lighter because it's obviously a lot more content heavy, but it will give you a good way, a good path how to get your podcast out there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen here quickly with you guys. And so business growth through podcasting lesson 3. Welcome back for the Growth University. In lesson 3, start marketing. Like there's no podcast unless there's an audience, and there's no audience unless you're marketing. So you need to start marketing. Types of content that work and where to put it. So I'm going to break down how to market, what to do, this kind of stuff. And we're going to discuss sponsorship as well, and the different types of sponsorship and the different types of ads you can run and this kind of stuff. So let's get started. Now, some people love Gary Vee. Some people don't like Gary Vee. Some people don't even know who Gary Vee is. Gary Vaynerchuk is actually a mentor to me. I've worked with Gary in the past. I've studied under him. I met his team. I've worked with his team for a while. I've learned from his team. So Gary's an inspiration to me, and he released a content model that really breaks down and it really solidifies perfectly what you should do with your podcast and how to market your podcast. So the Gary Vee content model uses one pillar piece of content, which is your podcast, which is the pillar piece that's your one episode you've done, and repurpose it into 30 different pieces of content across different platforms for each individual platform. Now, I know 30, you said it sounds like a lot. And yes, it is a lot. And you don't have to do 30. That's him. He has a team of people working for him, so he can do 30. I would recommend doing 5 to 6 to 10 if you can. It would be amazing. So, we'll go through exactly what he does. So, the pillar content. That's one long form piece of content. For you, it's your podcast. For others, it's a Q&A show, it's keynotes, it's whatever it is. You take that piece of content and you break it down and you create short form piece of content, articles, memes, images, quotes, stories, mashups, remixes, stitches, rants, gifs, whatever it is. You can, if you know how to do it. And again, YouTube is your best friend. If you don't, you're going to learn. And then you're going to distribute across all social medias, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Quora, like anything and everything. Snapchat, if you still have a Snapchat account. Maybe, maybe not. And that's the best way to do it. So I'm going to show you quickly here. Again, I'm going to have this on the cheat sheet just so when you're editing your content, Canva here is your best friend. If you don't have Photoshop, if you're not into designing or artwork or anything like that, canva.com, CANVA, again, it's on the cheat sheet. It's your best friend here because they have pre-made content that you can literally drag and drop your images onto, or you can create content from there very simply, very, very easily. Again, YouTube is your best friend. Again, I don't think you won't need YouTube for Canva. It's that simple. You'll see it. You can literally take their templates and just put your wording over it. Like, it's very simple. There's free services. You can obviously upgrade to the pro version, but the free one should do you fine for now. Have a look there at the, even take a photograph or a screenshot of that, and just to have it to hand. So whenever you're editing and creating content, you can say, all right, I need a 1080 by 1080 square for Instagram. So that's exactly what I do. 1080 by 1920 is the long form. That also works for Reels and for TikTok. So that's our platform dimensions. So to go through the different types of the different types of content I would put out on platforms, right? So I would take my episode. So what I do, let's break down what I do for Content is King, right? I take one episode. I have Offensive Charm as one of my old podcasts. We don't do it anymore, but that was just two kind of fellas chatting utter nonsense and just being bros, talking everything and anything. So I would take an episode of Content is King or Offensive Charm. I would then remember from recording, right, that was a good segment, that was a good segment, that was a good segment, and I'd clip those and I'd bring them to my editing software, be it iMovie, be it GarageBand, be it whatever it is that you're editing on. I edit myself personally on Final Cut Pro. That's where I was trained on in film school, and that's what I've ever stayed on. And then I would then clip it, and then I'd have the top and tails, like episode 23, Jay goes too far, let's say there, or Gary, as you can see. So on Instagram, I put in reels mainly for Content is King. I put on reels and I share it to stories. So you have 60 seconds, up to 60 seconds on a reel. So that's plenty for someone to get a taste of what it is. So on Instagram, video clips, guest photos, quotes, in-studio activity, audience interaction, promote through stories and reels, and leverage your guest audience. So that's what I'm saying. So on Instagram, I'll post video clips. I'll post guest photos of us and the guests saying, thank you so much for coming to the studio. I post quotes like Gary has on the screen there. It's an image of Gary talking, but it's a quote from the podcast. In-studio activity, it could be stories. Hey, we're behind the scenes here. This kind of stuff. A new podcast episode coming out soon. Audience interaction, you can put out stories or on the stories you put questions. What guests you want to see? What question should I ask this person? That kind of stuff. Get the audience involved, and make sure to give them a shout out if you do use their question. They love hearing their own voice or their own name on podcasts. People do. Again, promote through stories and reels, guys. Link is in my bio. Make sure to check out my latest episode where I speak to this person. You're tagging them, tagging your guests the whole time. Excuse me. And that's where you're leveraging your guest audience. You're always leveraging your guest audience. You're always tagging them. You're always hoping for a share. Like they don't have to share. Don't expect them to share because they mightn't, and don't get pissed off at them if they don't. It is what it is. If they share, great. But you're always tagging them. You're always pushing them. You're always interacting. I would also, if someone follows or someone comments on, let's say, a clip or a photo saying great stuff, I'd always follow them back as your brand. So you're creating a community within a community, if that makes sense. You're going to your guest podcast, you're going to your guest community. If they've shown, if they've liked, if they've commented, I would follow them back because they've shown interest in what you're doing and what you're discussing. So there's a good chance they'll follow back and you'll gain a follow. Again, Facebook. I do Facebook. So on Facebook, I'd use it for announcements. I'd use it for video clips. I'd use it for sound bites. I'd use it for surveys and questions. I'd leverage, again, my audience, my guest audience. So it all depends what type of podcast you are. It will really depend on what type of podcast you are for the platform you'll see that will benefit the most from your content. But there's no harm in putting content across all the platforms. It's always the safest bet because let's say you go ham hog on Instagram and you're nonstop, boom, 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 boom. You've built a really good audience and they're really following you. And then Instagram sells tomorrow and then they close it down or they change it and everyone hates Instagram. You've lost that audience. That's gone and that's completely out of your control. There's nothing you can do there. So I think it's always better to spread your content across all platforms because that way you always have a safety net of, right, Instagram is gone. Now, don't get me wrong. There will be your favorite ones and there will be ones, your favorite platforms, and there will be ones that perform better than others. But again, it's out of your control in the scenario that you can't help what happens in the background of a platform. Like, unless you're Zuckerberg and you own it, like, there's nothing you can do. So all you can do is promote across all platforms. Again, announcements. We're having John from O'Neill's Shoes. Delighted to have him on the show. Been a customer of his for years. We're going to discuss more with John. Or delighted to have my sponsor on board. Delighted to have my new client Sophie. She had back issues, and through 3 amazing sessions with her, I got her back fixed. We're going to discuss how her back got so bad and how I fixed it. If you're a physio, this kind of stuff, Sound bites are always good, very handy. What that soundbite is, you'll get a little thing in Canva, you'll get your image and your logo and stuff, and you'll have audio playing over, and that's it. And if you can do captions on it, great. If not, that's okay too. Just have a little sound on kind of animation. Again, all in Canva for you. Twitter, obviously, to me, Twitter's that Reddit and Twitter are really the only kind of real social media left, in my personal opinion. They're the ones where people are actually being social. They're actually commenting. They're actually talking. They're actually understanding each other and fighting and arguing, and they're being social. Where it's Facebook is okay. Facebook has groups and stuff. I understand that, but obviously Instagram, TikTok, it's gone away from that kind of social thing more than a. I'm not getting to that rant, but anyway. So Twitter again, announcements. You're tagging these people like this Republic of Work podcast I used to produce. Like that was episode 2 coming soon with Jonathan Healy, and we tagged Jonathan and we said great episode coming soon. Jonathan shared with his followers. We got some followers, and it just kind of built. Again, I think it's 2 minutes. Twitter will let you put up unhindered, so you can put a 2-minute clip out there. Again, images, sound bites, surveys, questions. You can ask polls. You can say, guys, on this podcast, and I'm asking this question. I want to hear your opinion. Give them 4 options in a poll, and then let them vote off it. And then again, it sounds great on your podcast. Your audience get involved. If they did vote, they'll listen to hear the results. And once again, the all important, leverage your guests' audience. I can't underestimate how important that is, because that's the only way of really growing your audience is by tagging, sharing, and people seeing it through others. So that's what I would use Twitter for. YouTube is really hard, really hard to crack. It really is. You need to be so constant and always putting up. I myself put an episode of Content is King up every week. It takes me 20-25 minutes to edit, put it out, get a full clip, and I might get 4 or 5 views. Now you're asking me why bother? Because it's there. Why not bother? Like, I have the time. It's not like I don't have the time. I'm editing the podcast anyway. I'm just clipping the videos together. So in studio, what I do with my co-host Muriel is we have our 2 phones and we set them up on tripods, little small tripods, nothing too crazy. And we put one on me and one on Muriel, and then she airdrops me the video, and then I have the 2 videos, and then I drag it into my iMovie or my Movie Maker or whatever it is you're using to edit, and I clip them on top, and I kind of just format them. Again, nothing too crazy, nothing too mental. If you want, you can do it where you can cut between where you don't have to layer it at all. Layering could kind of confuse you a small bit. So you can just have Muriel talking, then it cuts to me talking, then it cuts to Muriel talking if you want. But YouTube is really the bit. It's really the full video. I love watching podcasts myself personally. I really think they've taken over from the talk shows. Like, I'll sit down with my wife and we'll watch a podcast of our favorite people, and it will kill an hour or 2. And that would be our evening's entertainment. We'll sit down, we'll have a cup of tea and a few biscuits and watch a podcast. But this is where the full video should live. This is where the full video of a podcast should live. And if you want, you can then, all the clips, everything you're doing, all the promotion you're doing, if you want YouTube to be your platform, target everything to go to YouTube. So available now on Spotify, or watch our full video on YouTube here. And you can always be pushing on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all this kind of stuff. Have the link in your bio on Instagram saying, here's watch our full video now. Linktree is a great software where you can have like 6 or 7 links. When you click it, it brings you to kind of a profile and has 6 or 7 links, whatever you want. I have it for Content is King. It's brilliant. And then podcast clips as well. Joe Rogan is very famous for this, obviously, since he's jumped to Spotify. Joe Rogan, if you don't know, was offered $100 million to move to Spotify from YouTube, and he did. And what he does now is you can only get his exclusive full videos if you want to watch it on Spotify. But what he does so brilliantly is he has 5, 10, 15-minute clips of his podcast still living on YouTube, still making him money from getting the views, but also they'll see the 15 minutes and go, I want to watch the full thing. I have to join Spotify. And then Spotify get a follower, a new sub, and they get some money out of that. And Joe, so it's a whole thing. So full video, podcast clips, and then if you want to broadcast live, YouTube is great for that. If you want to broadcast your podcast live, I'd look at the likes of StreamYard. It's a very good software. Very, very good software. There's one called Riverside FM. I've yet to dabble with it. I've never messed with it, but I've seen it. I've heard of it. If you want to check that out, if you want to broadcast live. But I know StreamYard goes to YouTube, Facebook and LinkedIn Live. So if you want to do a live session where your fans or your customers can kind of jump in and comment and stuff, StreamYard is a good software. Again, we have the cheat sheet. Hopefully, I'll put it in. Here's a breakdown of the pillar of content. So Facebook Live, you've done a podcast, you've done a YouTube video, you've done an IGTV. So what you're going to do is you're going to take that pillar of content and you're going to break it down into those clips, into micro content for Instagram, for LinkedIn, for Facebook, for TikTok and Twitter, and you're always pushing back to the main source of the pillar content. So you're pushing always back to the pillar. So it's be it Spotify, be it Apple, be it YouTube, wherever you want that to be, whatever you want that to be. You want to be YouTube, push all to YouTube. If you want to be Spotify, all to Spotify. And then what you can do as well is you can try, like there's a rev.com, I believe it's called rev.com. And what that is, you pay per minute of content. So let's say you have a 30-minute podcast, right? You upload that to them. You'll pay $30, and within a few hours, you'll have a fully transcribed podcast sent back to you in PDF form. So you have, you then, after having $30 spent, you'll have a blog post. You'll have an article for LinkedIn. You'll say, you can obviously edit and just cut out a few questions and comments and have people, like LinkedIn is great for business. It's so, at the moment, it's amazing for business growth that you're putting content out there, that kind of content. And if you can play with Canva and touch around and just get that stuff, you can then say, let's say you take a question you asked in the podcast and you put that on the first slide. Someone swipes left on Instagram. The answer's on the next slide. They swipe again, there's another question. When did you start business? 2007. Why did you start the business? Oh, my dad made me get into the business. Like whatever it is, but it's content, it's solid, it looks great, and it all stems from your podcast. It's all taken from that pillar content. So when they read it and they go, oh, I'll actually listen to that info, they're going to hear it back and go, that's where I heard it. It will resonate with them. Okay, I'm in. Medium, again, you can write blog articles on Medium and stuff. So that's the kind of pillar content scenario. I have post times here as an example. These aren't exact because these post times change. The best times to post always change at the moment. As of Monday, the 6th of September, all these pillar contents is 6 a.m. They're saying worldwide 6 a.m. is the time to post. Dominate the morning. That changes the whole time. Just keep an eye to it. The best time to post on socials, always articles. Later.com is a great blog that kind of keeps up to date and that kind of stuff for Instagram and other things. But as you can see, so like if you're putting the pillar content out at 12 o'clock on Facebook, the live podcast and the live YouTube goes live. At 12:01, you want all your micro content scheduled to go out, pushing everything back to the pillar content. So once that goes live, you'll schedule everything out on Business Manager. Facebook Business Manager lets you schedule everything out. Later.com if you want to set up one of those. Hootsuite is another one. They're basically social media schedulers and content schedulers. And you put it out 12 o'clock, let's say, 12:01, 12:02, 12:03, 12:04, whatever time you want, 12:05 even. Now live. Make sure to check out this content, and then you've scheduled out through the week all these bits that these clips and these articles and these images and these quotes, all pushing back to your pillar of content and promoting that. And obviously tagging your guest so you can leverage the audience. These are some of the apps I use to promote my podcast and to build my podcast. So Facebook, obviously, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. I do a lot of, we have a nice growth on TikTok from one or two clips that went a bit viral for us. Nothing crazy. We had 130,000 views on one of them, but it got us 5,000 followers on TikTok, and they're very, they're loyal followers. They're always interacting with us. They're always commenting and they're always giving us opinions and feedback on our podcast, which is amazing. So never underestimate TikTok. Layout, that's one I use for kind of imagery. If I have 3 or 4 pictures of people, I use Instagram layout just to kind of put up on the wall. And don't forget, content is subjective, guys. That I could put a picture up and hate it, think it's terrible, but I have to put it up and this kind of stuff. But you as a fan or a viewer or whoever is there learning could go, that's a great picture. Content is fully subjective in that matter, that even if you might think it's the best, someone might think it's brilliant. So never be afraid to put something out unless it's absolute garbage and you know it is, and everyone else said that's a terrible looking picture. It's out of focus, you're blurry, doesn't make sense. Obviously, then don't. But in the likes of content, quotes, video clips, if you're not happy with it, doesn't matter. Put it out because content is subjective, and you might not like it, but your fans will like it. Photoshop is one I use. Hootsuite is the scheduling software I use for all my content that I put out stuff on Twitter, Facebook. Go here now, go watch now live, this kind of stuff. Photoshop is a big one I use for all. I don't use Canva. My dad's a photographer. He taught me how to use Photoshop as a kid, so I'm kind of just always stuck to Photoshop. But to be honest, I do delve into Canva now and then when I need something done quickly. I'll bang, just get it done. Literally 4 or 5 minutes out the gap. That's why I have Canva on here. It's very handy. SoundCloud is the software I use to get my RSS feed. That's my podcast hosting platform. This guy here is the Apple Podcast and Spotify down the bottom as well. Now let's talk about sponsorship. If you're lucky enough to get sponsorship, because you're not going to get sponsorship straight away unless you have a really solid relationship with the sponsor, or it's another business you own sponsoring this kind of thing, or you're going to do a little tax write-off, which is great. Brilliant. Well done to you. I have some prices here that will kind of help you gauge how much to charge these people. So, CPM is cost per 1,000. So, for example, 15 to 20 euro or dollars per 1,000. Let's say it's 4,000 weekly listeners to your podcast. That's $60 to $80 or euro an episode. Okay, let that sink in for a second. Let's let that work out a small bit, and we'll dive in a bit deeper because it gets a bit kind of not heavy, but it just we'll dive in a small bit more. So cost per 1,000, right? Sponsorship, pre-roll and post-roll ads. Pre-roll and post-roll ads are the ads that play before and after the podcast starts. Excuse me. Pre-roll and post-roll ads are the ads that play before the podcast starts, while post-roll ads are the ones that play after the podcast finishes. Hi there, welcome to the podcast. My name is Jay. This podcast is sponsored by Content is King. It's a great new podcast you're going to listen to. You're going to love it. Podcast ends. Hey, thank you so much for listening. This podcast was sponsored by... That's exactly what that is. That's the pre-roll and the post-roll. Pre-roll and post-roll ads usually 15 to 30 seconds long and fairly straightforward. As I said, this podcast is sponsored by Acme Tools. Check out their line of new chainsaws out this autumn. Whatever it is. Your typical CPMs, cost per 1,000 for these ads, fall between $15 and $20 euro as well. A mid-roll ad. Now, mid-roll is extremely important because mid-roll is where you have them. You have their undivided attention. Because once you said it, you'll see it yourself in your analytics. You'll see once you say, all right, guys, that's our episode. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to check out. You'll see the drop-off rate. People stop. They stop. Once you've stopped giving them the content they want to hear, they'll stop. But the mid-roll ad, it comes out of nowhere. They're in the middle of the story. They're in the middle of the interview. They're in the middle of the journey of the podcast, and you hit them with an ad, and they're fully engrossed in your podcast. So this is the best type of ad for your sponsor. Mid-roll ads are played during the podcast, breaking up the episode's content with the sponsor's message. Mid-roll ads are generally more free form. Sometimes the sponsor will give you a script they want you to read out word for word. In other cases, they'll give you some talking points. Ideally, talking points. It all depends on the podcast type you have. Like if it's a very straightforward and a very by the book, then take the script, no problem. But I've heard great ways of people working in. You look great. Yeah, you're really looking well. Your hair looks fantastic. Speaking of hair, this week's sponsor is Regain. I don't know. That could be the segue you use. I don't know. But if you understand what I mean, that segue into an ad is always great. If the sponsor does give you some flexibility, mix up the ad each episode so you don't train your listeners to tune out. Because obviously, if they hear the same thing over and over 6 episodes, they're gonna, hi, thank you for listening. Hi, this sponsored blah blah if you can mix it up and just bring it in and kind of wove it into the podcast where it just fits. It just works well with them. They'll hear the ad without thinking or knowing they're hearing the ad, and it's kind of subconsciously registered with them. If the sponsor gives you some flexibility, mix up the ad in each episode so you don't train listeners to tune out. Mid-roll ads are slightly more valuable to podcast sponsors because the audience is captive. They're in listening mode and less likely to skip ahead or close the episode because of an ad. Due to this engagement, the average CPM falls between $20 and $25 or euro. So you can charge just a small bit extra because you have their undivided attention. You can charge that extra $5, the extra €5 per ad. How much can you earn from sponsorship? So if you want to break it down like that, obviously starting off, you're going to have a small audience and it's building and building and building. Like, let's not forget Joe Rogan, Tom Segura, Your Mom's House, all these podcasts, they're on like the hundreds and hundreds and thousands of episodes. And it's only since episode 500 that they actually gain notoriety and gain this kind of stuff, you know? So you're going to have to keep going. It's going to be tough, but you want your sponsor to pay for mid-roll ad and either pre-roll and post-roll, because it's kind of a package you're going to put together for them. Some will pay for all three, which is great. They'll take the full package and they want all three spots on your podcast, which is amazing. But the best result, you should mention them twice. If you're having trouble landing a sponsor, consider offering a free plug. Let's say your sponsor wants a mid-roll ad at €20 CPM or $20 CPM and a post-roll at 15 CPM. So what you can do is you can say, look, if you're having trouble landing them, I'll give you a pre-roll for free. It's a value of €20, $20, and I'll do the mid-roll and the post-roll. So buy two, get one free, if that kind of makes sense. Don't be afraid to play with them. Don't be afraid to say, look, again, there's give and take. Don't be so stringent. No, this is my rules. You need to pay me this or this, and this. Like, let's not forget, these guys are trusting you and your brand to help promote their brand. That's a huge trust scenario these people are giving you, that they want you to help support them and they want you to push business their way. So just to go back to this, so let's say your sponsor wants a mid-roll ad at $20 and a post-roll at $15. That's $35 per 1,000 listeners. So if an episode gets 2,000 listens or views, you get $70 per episode. If it gets $40,000 or 40,000 views and 40,000 whatever it is views, listens, you'll earn €1,200 from that episode. So obviously, the bigger audience you have, the more listens you have, we can look into promoting it through paid advertising. I don't recommend that. I think organic at the moment is always best, just to see if there's an audience for it instead of wasting your money. Don't be afraid to play ball with your sponsors, because again, as I said, say, look, if you want to sponsor the entire series, it's 6 episodes. I'll give you 1 episode for free, or I can give you 2 episodes for free and a feature on the like. Don't be cater to them. Yes, have a rough outline, have a guideline of a package, a content package. In fact, I'll attach my pricing package for Content is King, just to the so you can have a look at it and break down and see exactly what I've done. Also in sponsorship, consider your niche. Consider the genre you're in, and consider the world you're in and the business you're in. The most important part of sponsorship is finding sponsors that fit your niche. Your audience will grow bored and frustrated if your ads are totally irrelevant to them. Okay? So you're a fashion blogger. You're there talking about the news, Gucci, Fendi, all this stuff. And then, hi, this is Jim from Jim's Electricals. We have the newest TV here. And then the listener's like, hold on a second, I was just listening to about Gucci and Fendi and what's going on? Or it's hi, it just be sure that that your audience want to hear the sponsor, because obviously it benefits your sponsor and it benefits you, because your audience don't get pissed off, they don't get annoyed that you're kind of just you're not kind of just shoveling content into them. You're not just saying, oh, here's a sponsor, I got paid, go. Besides, you want your ad to fit your audience, so the sponsor does well too. That's what I mean. So like, once your audience are happy, your sponsor will be happy. This way they'll keep advertising through your show and you can raise your rates over time. Guys, we've gone 10,000 extra listens next month or last month. we need to bump up the price. Like it just works. It just works together and serendipitously. How to secure a podcast sponsor. So when you're searching for potential sponsors, where can you find potential sponsors? Browse ads on websites or pages or influencers in your niche. Check out companies who advertise in industry magazines. Review businesses who purchase paid ads on social media. Ask listeners what kind of products they want to buy, or they like and buy often. Just to break that down, right? Let's say you're a mechanic and you want to start a podcast and you want to get a sponsor. What you're going to do is you're going to go to websites, mechanic websites, car part websites, influencers in that world of the car parts and mechanics, and see what products they're pushing. See what products they're partnering up with. See what products and who are sponsoring them. See the banner ads on websites like I again in Ireland there's a it's random, but it's called Mix Garage, and what that is you can buy any car part for any car and it's shipped to your door the next day, and then obviously you take it to, you can do it yourself or you take it to your mechanic and he does it for you. But if you're a mechanic, you go to that website, you see the banner ads, you see the site, who's advertising on that website, who thinks it's worthwhile advertising there to that audience. Check out companies who advertise in industry magazines. So if you are looking at industry magazines, mechanic, cars, fashion and beauty, look at the ads. Look at the ads section, the classified section. See who's trying to promote their company that way. And reach out and say, hey, I saw your ad in the wedding magazine, whatever. Weddings Now magazine. My business is growing. I have 2,000 people on Instagram. I have 1,000 listeners on my podcast. I'd love to have a sponsorship. Would you be interested in talking? And 90% of them will say no. One of them will say yes. And you've secured a sponsor. You know, that kind of thing. So just be smart about it. There's a thing as well. What you can do if you can see a business or it's handy for competition as well. But if you're in if you find a business, let's say back to mechanics, right, and you find a car parts auto shop, if you go to their Facebook page, right, and you scroll down halfway down the page, on the left, you will see a thing called page transparency. Click see all, click add library, right? It will all pop up in front of you and you'll be able to see their adverts that are running on social media. They're running across Instagram and Facebook. You'll see. And this will tell you if they're spending money on advertising. This will tell you if they're putting money behind their marketing and that they have a budget for marketing, and they might have a budget for podcasting, which means they might have a budget for sponsorship. Ideally they do. Sometimes obviously they don't, and you'll go to pages and they won't have anything and you'll just see nothing here. And that's that. You can still reach out. There's no harm in reaching out. It's just if you see they have a bit of money behind everything, it makes things a bit easier for you. One easy way to find sponsors is to listen to other podcasts in your niche and approach the companies who sponsor them. It's pretty straightforward, guys. Like, you're listening to a podcast in your niche. Like, again, there's no competitors. It's all competition. It's all community. There's no competition. It's like I say, if they like you, they like you. If they like your competitor, they like your competitor. It's all community. There's no competition in this world in podcasting. But you could listen to their podcast and see who's sponsoring them and say, hey, I heard your sponsorship on that. I'd love to get involved. Let me know if I can help in any way. We'd love to have you as a sponsor on our show. Here's what we can do for you, this kind of stuff. They're already paying to reach the demographic of listeners, so they might be receptive to your proposal. Even if those companies don't want to advertise with you, at least you'll have a better idea of what kind of companies to approach. Getting your proposal together is extremely important. Impress your potential sponsors with a proposal that exemplifies your personality and professionalism. For best results, fashion your pitch into a slide deck for sponsorships to flip through very easily. I would always recommend your deck to be maybe 2 pages. I would never go more than 3. It's just too much info. It's too much. They don't need to know that stuff. They need the bullet points. They need the figures. They need the facts. Your proposal deck should include title and logo of your podcast and products and business, summary of your podcast niche, who your audience are, include the episode lengths, 35 to 40 minute episodes, your subjects. So it could be, if you're a counselor, let's say, it could be marriage counseling, it could be divorce counseling, it could be depression counseling. Like these episodes, if you're in, what do we say, woodwork, it could be, you know what I mean? Like just put the subjects of your podcast in the type of format you are. We are a interview based podcast. We are a roundtable style podcast. We are a monologue style podcast. And who you've had on the show for interviews you've conducted. Again, it's very helpful when you get guests on. When you go to sponsor, saying yes, we've had some of the biggest names in the industry on our podcast. Yes, we've had very in depth conversations with professionals of this tier and this level. It just helps. It really does help with sponsorship as well. You're putting information about you, the host, anyone else involved in the production. So you'll say, my editor is Mary, my sound engineer is John, I'm the host. Or if you're all three of them, it's you in your bio. Put in photos if you can. People like to see faces and kind of put a name to the face. Information about your listeners, such as demographics, download statistics, and any evidence that you have that your listeners really love your show. So you're putting in screenshots of social media comments. Love this episode, guys. Great feedback. Thank you so much. Learned a lot. This kind of stuff you're kind of just screenshotting and putting into your proposal. Proposed rates and partnership ideas. Make it clear that you're open to ideas also. And never forget, obviously, your contact information so they can reach out to you. That would be handy. So when it comes to sponsorship, top tips: don't rule out the little guys. Don't be too picky about price. Stick to companies you respect. Consider a proof of concept sponsorship. So don't rule out the little guys. Small businesses tend to support small businesses. If you're starting a podcast and they want to support, and then you might get a small business. Sheila's down the road. She's a hairdresser. She gets 10 to 15 clients a day. She might jump in and sponsor you for the first 2 episodes. Epic. Sheila, thank you so much for your sponsorship. Book now online at sheilas.com. This kind of stuff. Don't be too picky about the price. As I said, growing a podcast is tricky enough. And then if you're stagnant, if you're going to stagnate on a price and you're going to be picky and fight people on $5, $10, $15, come on, there's no need. Stick to companies you respect. There's no point as well getting a company that you despise and don't stand by their messaging or their products. And if you don't just do it for the money, because it'll make you sick to your stomach after a while as you're listening to going, brought to you by this, and you're like, oh my God, why did I do that? Don't stick to companies you like and stick to companies you respect that you want to promote. And then consider a proof of concept sponsor. So a proof of concept sponsor would be, hey guys, look, we're just starting a new podcast. We'd love you to be our sponsor for season 1. We're not going to charge you. It's a proof of concept. We want to show you how good this is going to be. Or you could say, look, we're not going to charge you for the first 3 episodes. If you like 3 episodes and you think it's worthwhile, will you jump on a sponsor at this price for the back 3? Or you can say season 1, it's no charge. We love you as a sponsor. We'd love to have you affiliated with our brand. Season 2 comes around, we would love to lock you in as a sponsor for $50 an episode. Whatever it is. Consider proof of concept. Again, it just lets the sponsor know that you're not there for, give me money, I want money. It's, look, we love what we're doing. We think this can really work and we want you on board at the ground level. That was a lot, guys. It was really a lot of information in that episode and this lesson. So I hope you caught on to it. I hope it helped. I hope you learned a bit. Once again, hit me up if you want to follow me on Instagram. You can ask me questions. I'm happy to chat whenever. If you have any questions, do let me know, because it is very heavy there. Sponsorship was heavy. The content was heavy. The marketing styles are heavy. Check out Content is King on social media. You can see my kind of style of clips I put out to promote back to the pillar content, which is always kind of Spotify. Next week, we're going to kind of going the podcast post-mortem, or next week, I say the next lesson is going to be the podcast post-mortem, analytics, understanding analytics, and kind of what to do now. I've gone live on my podcast. Where do we go from here? So thank you again for listening. Thank you again for watching, and I hope you learned. I hope it helped.